Welcome to Weekly Briefing. I'm your host, Rion. This week we've seen federal mask mandates lifted, the Washington Post exposed for the porcelain bully it is, and a presidency dictated by a sweaty press assistant in a bunny suit. Each of these topics deserve a full segment. But there's an ongoing culture trend that has slipped under the radar. It's everywhere, and it deserves notice.
Everyone's always like, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? Never!
That's a digital creator on Instagram named Romita. She's one of countless lunatics flooding the social media streams of young women. Her message is a product of second-wave feminism, taking the shrill criticisms of traditional family and elevating it to a throne of glorified singlehood, one set to rap music and self-recorded. The narcissism reaches a hysterical pitch.
I want everyone to look at me and be like, that my best friend. She a real bad bitch, got her own money. She don't need no on the dance floor. She a 2-3 drink, hey, that's me.
And while this message is a product of a rabid generation who trashed family in the name of liberation, this influencer embodies a curious phenomenon. The success of an ugly and haggard message resonating with otherwise young and pretty women. It's not complicated. The more attractive the messengers, the easier it is to normalize a repulsive message. The numbers reflect this. A record 39% of Americans between the age of 25 and 50 have never married. In 1970, that number was 9%. There are lots of reasons for this trend, but observed alongside this anti-family is cool message, you wonder, how does this message resonate at all? The answer is, they've been conned. Conned by man-hating feminists who themselves are the useful idiots of a Marxist agenda pushing to regulate the world's resources and control the population. Don't get me wrong, first-wave feminists, all Republicans, fought for and forged a new society where women could vote and participate within society's fullest spectrums, a noble legacy. Second-wave feminism of the 60s, the one that shrieks for the right to kill children, hate men, and destroy the nuclear family, works to erase the differences that have for millennia differentiated women from men. The ability to bear children, to nurture a home, to create and inspire beauty in a brutish world, to be spiritual leaders and healers. The Gloria Steinem wing trashed these identities as weak and submissive, resulting in a feminism that has sold generations of women a self-cannibalizing scam, that marriage is imprisonment, childbearing is a poison, and blood sacrifice to career is the pinnacle of success. Okay, so our dancing Romita makes a little more sense now. A message as deeply counterintuitive as this one has only thrived because it has been pushed by larger forces. Modern feminists were the most gullible dupes the Marxist elite had ever seen. One of the hallmarks of second-wave feminism was its championing of birth control and abortions in the name of liberating women, all euphemisms for population control, an agenda spearheaded by radical environmentalists in the tradition of the 18th century writings of Thomas Malthus. Malthus argued the world could not handle the exponential growth of humans, that earthly resources were limited, and unless governments intervened, humanity was doomed. The solution? Population control. The perfect vessels? Feminists. Here's proof. The Jaffe Memo is a 1969 document produced by Planned Parenthood. It lists ways to manage the U.S. population. Here are some of their ideas. Restructure family, postpone or avoid marriage, compulsory sex education for kids, encourage homosexuality, fertility control agents in the water supply, encourage women to work, compulsory abortions, payments to encourage sterilization. The list goes on. Do these agenda items sound familiar? The Jaffe Memo, look it up. The Jaffe Memo's ideas have been playing out for quite some time, and population control freaks have slipped a date-rape drug in the feminist agenda's drink. Check out populationbalance.org, who calls on humanity to shrink toward abundance. The entire world's population could, in fact, live and sustain itself off a landmass the size of Colorado. But that's a fact that depopulation bozos need you to ignore. And yes, the birth rates are at record lows. And in a world of endless isms, here's one more. Antinatalism, as pushed by such groups as StopHavingKids.org. Antinatalism's purpose is to normalize child freedom. The misery of motherhood and children are key messages. Here's the kind of critical thinking they promote. Let mothers talk about hating being a mother. Let mothers talk about being trapped by motherhood. Let mothers talk about regret and mental exhaustion and not being cared for by anyone. Let mothers tell their truth so that we all benefit and don't go into it misinformed. That writer goes on to say, this isn't about not loving children, it's about allowing for such things to be complicated. Why is still having kids celebrated? One supporter asks. Another states, a lot of humans wish they were never born. But the war isn't just on the unborn and on reproducing. Young women are still being targeted with the toxic feminist ideologies villainizing the home. Last week, feminist chalkboard screecher Jill Filipovic at the New York Times pontificated. More mothers at home makes for worse, more sexist men who see women as mommies and helpmeets. Men with stay-at-home wives are more sexist than men with working wives. They don't assess women's workplace contributions fairly, and they are less likely to hire and promote women. Filipovic adds, stay-at-home moms are mentally depressed, unhappy, and unstable. This from the woman who once hysterically tweeted, men should have a third of their pubic bone fractured for every child they produce in order to equalize the devastation of childbirth. She sounds happy and stable. Just last November, The Atlantic published an article titled, What Becoming a Parent Really Does to Your Happiness. It elaborates a study finding children decreased quality of life. Here's that keyword again. Happiness in parenthood is complicated. Compound this with the flourishing of parental misery humor on social media, mainstreaming the hatred of one's kids.
Mom? Mom? Mom?
Such humor validates such liberated slogans as living kid-free as a woman is the ultimate feminist flex. The message is resonating. Here's CNN showcasing women who have made the conscious choice not to have children. For many, being single or without child is just the way things worked out and life can be perfectly fulfilling. But when it's taken to the extreme activism as embodied by the antinatalist movement and then pushed into the mainstream as feminism attacking women who stay home to raise their families, this is where it deserves to be squashed. Encouraging women to chase career over family is not raising expectations or defeating the patriarchy, it's lowering expectations and rewarding the patriarchy. We're not expected to juggle work and family and self-care. We're not expected to have well-behaved kids who don't throw tantrums on the floor. Why? Because parenting is complicated. We should expect more of future generations, not less. As ugly and counterintuitive as all this might seem, here is the silver lining. The radicals pushing this message are simply engaging in a form of what I'll call Darwinicide. That is, if you're someone who buys into the argument that children are pure misery and home life is an evil form of submission, by all means, don't reproduce. It's a winning strategy for humanity long term if the screeching feminists and the hyperventilating Greta Thunbergs of the world do not multiply. The irony is, by ripping themselves from the gene pool, they're rescuing humanity from their lunacy. And that's my opening argument. When we return, we discuss another kind of crisis affecting America's population, the tragedy at our southern border. We'll be right back.